Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to be going over my top 5 tips that I think every single Zyra player needs to know. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is LowFit. I do educational content, do tips, videos, guide videos, also stream here on YouTube. So if you enjoy the content, please remember to hit that subscribe button. Now, my goal behind this video is to make you a better League of Legends player, as well as to give you a better understanding of the champion as a whole. I put timestamps at every single point in my video. They're going to be both up at the top, as well as the bar down below is going to be segmented into the couple of different tips. If you want to contact me directly, I am going to put a pinned comment down below that will have my Discord. If you want to send me any messages, I'm always happy to help out fellow Zyra players. And finally, I'm a little bit limited with this format, only doing 5 tips, so I heavily encourage you, if you have a vast knowledge of playing Zyra, to make sure to comment down, your tips down below. And with all that out of the way, guys, let's jump into tip number 1. Alright, and getting into tip number 1, we are going to go over both runes and items and go over how Zyra can be extremely flexible in both of these respects. Now, I'm going to show you 2 different setups with runes. You can do the Dark Harvest setup if you are extremely experienced with Zyra and that you know that you can consistently proc the Dark Harvest. This is going to outperform Comet in the mid and late game. The reason why I like this rune over Comet is because I know Zyra is already really strong in the early game. I want to augment where she falls off a little bit, and that is where Dark Harvest is going to come in handy. I think Cheap Shot is great for a little bit more early game pressure, eyeball collection. Ultimate Hunter is great because you can get your cooldown really, really low, so it's up for every single team fight. Absolute Focus and Scorch can be a strong setup if you want a little bit more lane presence, or you can go Transcendence and the Gathering Storm if you want a little bit more scaling. It just, again, comes down to your play patterns. If you're one of those people that like steamrolling lane and then just keep moving forward, things like Comet, Scorch, and Absolute Focus can really help you with that. Now, with the runes, or with the items, there are 2 different choices with the mythic items. First of all, there's Liandry's Anguish, which is my preferred mythic item of choice, and there's also Luden's Tempest. Now, they both give pen in their own ways. Luden's Tempest giving you base pen on the item as well as the passive, and then Liandry's Anguish giving you 5% magic pen per second. So this is really good anti-tank, and this is a little bit more burst damage, but the way that Liandry's Anguish works, giving you a nice little burn on your plants, it just synergizes so well, where the proc of damage of Luden's Tempest is for short trades. So this is going to probably outperform Luden's Tempest in most team fights where you can consistently proc the dot damage. So just keep that in mind. And again, it comes down to play pressure, or with your whole type of play pattern. And Luden's Tempest is better for people that are just going to do hard snowball, and the Liandry's Anguish is a little bit of a safer pick. Now, second item is usually a really tough pick, but it is dependent on what your team needs. If you have very, very hyper-scaling champions, maybe you have something like a Vayne, maybe you have something like an Azir that are going to do a crap ton of backline damage, and you just really want to look to peel for them, getting Rylai's second can be very, very effective because your plants won't proc that slow. Now, if you're playing against a bunch of tanks, maybe you're playing against a Leona in the support role, maybe you're playing against a Malphite up top, and something like a, I don't know, out of the jungle, like a Sejuani, going something like a Demonic Embrace can be exceedingly effective to just get you a little bit more burn, a little bit more tankiness to stand up to some of their base damages and have it be very effective. Now, for a very easy, quick mythic passive proc, you can get Void Staff because it is an extremely cheap item and it is just highly, highly effective on Zyra. Again, really relying on how high her base damages are, and you do not have to get too much AP because her ratios aren't really the best. 70% on her ult, 50% on her E, and then it is a 60% on her Q, and then her plants both get 50% ratio. So you just want to keep this in mind when you're building her items and runes, that you should be changing it around for the play state. For example, Comet against something like Draven Leona, and maybe against a Janna Vayne, it'd be a lot better to go Dark Harvest because you're going to have more priority in that lane. And that will wrap up tip number 1 for Zyra. All right, and getting into tip number 2, I want to talk about plant utilization. If you are using the wrong plant in the wrong situation, it is really going to cause you quite a bit of damage and ultimately can cause you a game or at least a couple of kills. So, if you didn't know, the 2 ranges of the plants, the E is going to give you a 25% slow and has 400 range, while the Q plants are going to have a 575 range. Against champions with extremely predictable movement patterns, something like a Leona that you know is going to be running at usually a straight line at you and looking to just CC you and then run you back to your tower, staying in melee range the whole time, E plants are going to be a lot more effective. But if you're against something like a Vayne or a Janna that are going to be running around quite a bit, they can move, they can dodge, they have high movement speeds, throwing out Q plants are going to be a lot more effective because they can cover a very big variety of range when you are in that lane. So keep these in mind when you are looking to play out Zyra. If you didn't know, the plant placement is also extremely important. You don't just want to be nilly-willy throwing out plants and throwing a Qs. You want to understand what the trading pattern is going to look like. You want to have a bit of foresight on how the trade is going to go. Say you have a Draven that's 2-0 and they have a Kai'Sa that's 0-2. Generally, when a trade is initiated, they are going to be running back because they are at a disadvantage. So having a good understanding, if you have a lane priority, you want to be throwing the plants behind the enemy if you can. Now, I didn't hit the enemy targets there, so you can angle it a bit like this, where you're putting the plants behind the target and you are hitting them with the Qs. So you really want to be putting the plants not where the champion is, but where the champion wants to move. And this will allow you to get a couple more auto attacks off here with your plants and can really start helping you optimize your gameplay in your lane, where you can just start getting those huge snowball leads. And that will wrap up this tip. All right, and getting into tip number 3, we are going to be talking about the most important skill. If you cannot land this skill on Zyra, you really need to move on to a different champion. It is a little bit difficult to land because of its extremely slow missile speed, but once you get a hold of the timings, you can really become quite a menace because it lasts for quite a bit of time and how roots are so powerful. Now, first tip I can give, pretty basic. Throwing it from Fog of War can be in a very effective way to really land more ease. Now, this is augmented really well with having control wards and a sweeper, and then also being inventive of where you're throwing those roots out at the enemy targets. You can, when they're starting to push in lanes, hitting roots on targets like that can be extremely effective by just throwing it from that, because it's going to give them a lot less time to react, because they will not see the vines coming through the wall. They will just get rooted right at the end, so they will have very little time to react. So the best way to land more ease when you are playing Zyra is to try and hide your roots as long as possible, as well as by throwing it from angles that they do not expect. Straight up running at people, like say this is the enemy laner right here, if I would just be running straight at them and looking for an E, they know I am looking to throw out an E. They are ready to dodge. They are watching you because they know if they get hit by that E, the big trade is going to start. So by masking your intent, by maybe just getting into a kind of mid-range, not really max range, but about mid-range on the enemy target, and kind of going up and down and then throwing out your E is going to be a lot less predictable than just running straight at someone and throwing an E. Also, when you are getting chased and just doing a turnaround E, it's always a lot better. So if you combine these things by getting vision denial, looking like you are running out of the bush, not towards them from the bush, you are going to land quite a bit more ease. Now I want you to go into practice tool and get a really good understanding of the timing, because they're able to cover quite a bit of ground when you are throwing out your E. By the time you cast it, by the time it might hit them, you are going to have to be quite, you're going to have to predict their movement. Now, another really easy trick that a lot of people do, particularly in low elo, that can get you a lot of very free kills, is when people line up against walls. This is just a dream come true for Zyra, because all she has to do is lead it a little bit to the right, and there's no way for this target to dodge out on your E. So always look for these scenarios where someone is pinning themselves against the wall, and then line yourself up with them on the wall. Don't try and throw it at an angle, because they could either dodge up or dodge down. Always look to line up on the enemy target. It doesn't matter which wall it is going to be just a very effective way to land more ease. So please keep this in mind. If you have any questions about how to land more ease, it's kind of like my obsession when I play Zyra, because I know that it really is what determines a good Zyra player from a bad Zyra player. And that will wrap up this tip. All right, and getting into tip number 4, when you are playing Zyra, one thing that you have to get extremely good at when you are playing her is you have to understand that she is a bit like a shotgun. You really are squishy outside of getting a root on an enemy target, just because you are an immobile mage. So what you really want to be able to do is get out as much damage as possible, particularly if you're pretty strong. Maybe you got a couple kills and the enemy has an assassin that is looking to kill you. So you really want to get used to being able to throw out your entire combo at the same time. Now, if you didn't know, there is no internal cooldown, like maybe some other games, like what would be an example, like World of Warcraft had some internal cooldowns at some time. So you can really just roll your fingers across the keyboard and hit them with the full combo. I'll give you an example right here, where you can hit them with every single spell really just at the same time. The last thing you would want to be doing in a trade where there's a lot of assassins coming and a lot of damage on the board would be throw out your E, then maybe move around, maybe do a Q, and then throw out your R. If you really want to burst someone out, which is usually the best way to play out team fights, is just completely take all of their abilities out of the equation. You really want to be able to throw everything at once. You want to be throwing your E, and then as the E is moving, you can throw out your plants, and then you can hit your Q on the tail end of the root duration of your E, and then having your R proc as well is going to be a very effective way to play it out. So try and get your combos as fast and as crisp as possible. I'm a teeny bit out of practice because I've been playing a lot of Vhagar recently, but you can really get it so your combo just becomes absolutely disgusting and just seems like a one-shot. Now, a big thing that comes with this is understanding your ranges and how far you can throw your combo from. So just get into the practice tool, play around a little bit, and see how quickly you can get your entire combo out on a group of target dummies. And that will wrap up tip number 4. Okay, and getting into the final tip, maybe something that is a little bit less utilized from the average Zyra player, at least that I see in the elos that I play, and usually lower diamond. Elo, you really want to go around the objectives, you want to be checking the timers, and you want to be planting as many passive seeds as you can while you're simultaneously clearing out vision with your sweepers, maybe with some pink wards, and having all of these extra seeds is going to give you a lot more power and presence in the team fights. You want to think of it similar to something like an Alawi, how she wants to have her tentacles set up in her lane before a 2v1 might happen where she needs to get out as much damage as possible. So always try and get out as many passive seeds as you can around a big objective when you have priority around this, because this is just going to allow you to just absolutely catch people off guard to an insane degree. Being able to just randomly have like 4 plants just coming out of the bushes in a big team fight can really be the difference between winning and losing. So keep this in mind. Also, we are going to be going over team fighting on this tip as well. By the way, if you didn't know, you can also grab vision whenever you place your plant down. As you can see, I can check the bush with the W, and then with the Q. And then also, Zyra is a great counter to Maokai support. I know this is a little off topic, but Maokai support just gets absolutely dumpstered by the Zyra pick because you can outburst him and you can proc his saplings with your plants and completely consume all the presence that he develops off of that. Now, team fights, you really want to wait for the enemy to engage before you're committing your full ultimate. The absolute last thing that you want to do, and the thing that I see a lot of very poor Zyra players doing, is trying to throw out their combo from max range to engage on the enemy. Now this is going to be a very predictable trading pattern. A lot of people will see this coming, and they can just disengage, wait for your enraged plants to go away, and then re-engage, and you are going to be down in ultimate. So you always want to wait until the enemy commits on some of your allies and the fight starts. Now what I mean by commit are things like a Maokai W in, a Malphite R in, a Leona E in. This is when a team fight is committed, where your ultimate is going to do one of two things. It's going to be able to consistently get a high amount of damage on the enemy targets, or it's going to cut off 1 or 2 champions that have already dove in, and the rest of the team is going to have to back off because of your insane amount of plant damage. So always look to cut the enemy in half, divide and conquer with your ultimate if they are very, very skittish and they are trying to kite out and really play around your ultimate, which is usually a pretty smart way to play against Zyra. So always wait for the commitments. Maybe use some of your allies as meat bags, particularly if you feel like you're better than the average player on your team. Use them as a resource. Let the enemies dive and absolutely destroy your 0-3 Orianna mid lane that has no reason for playing Orianna. So I know it's random, but I just had a game recently that was like that. But yeah, keep this in mind when you are playing Zyra, that you want to wait for commitment before throwing out your R, and with objective control, always try and get as many passive plants in the area to help increase your overall power. That will wrap up, guys. My final tip, if you have any questions for me, you can hit me up in the comments down below, or you can join the Discord that is going to be in my pinned comments. And as always, guys, take it easy.